Welcome to the Just Out Here Tinkering Carburetor Tuning Guide. So I can't tell you how many times I've heard the words, don't touch the high jet. You can't touch the high jet. Don't touch that high jet. You can only tune the low jet. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not entirely true. Now, rather this voids a warranty, rather this causes issues with Viderazi, I've read the manual and it says that it could void your warranty if you make negligible adjustments to your motor. So, with that being said, as long as you make a good adjustment to your motor, all should be good, right? I don't know. Obviously, I don't speak for Viderazi, but if I were Viderazi, I would want my motors to be running as well as possible. And if your motor's not running properly and you need to make adjustments to the motor in order to get it to run properly, then I would not be upset with you about that. But once again, I'm not Viderazi, so take this advice with a grain of salt. But there's one thing that I can tell you for sure. If you have an issue with the way your motor is running and it's related to the high jet, and you do not adjust the high jet, the issue will not be resolved. It's kind of funny how that works, isn't it? So we're just quickly going to go over some basics. This here is your idle screw. This is not going to affect any of your fuel trims. This is simply going to affect how high or low your idle is. However, unless your motor will not stay running at all, at this point we're not going to touch this screw. Next, we've got the low jet. The low jet is the one that everyone tells you how to tune. There are 100 videos on YouTube telling you how to tune the low jet on your Moster 185. So you can watch any of those if you wish. I recommend the Scout video. They give a lot of good information. Follow that tutorial. Now this is the high jet. The high jet, the scary jet, the one you're not supposed to touch. This is the one we're touching today. So, how do you know if you have a problem with this jet? You know that you have a problem with this jet if all of your problems are based pretty much in the upper half of the RPM range. If your power band is super jumpy, not linear, if there's a power spike, if you can get up to half throttle and then when you give any more throttle, it bogs. It does anything like that. Any of those things are going to be your high jet. Your high jet kicks in somewhere roughly around 5,500 RPM-ish. So anything below that is your low jet. Anything above that is your low jet and your high jet together. So that's one of the most important things here. Your low jet has to be tuned first. Start with your low jet. Follow the tutorial that was given by Scout or any of the other tutorials. And essentially what I would do is, number one, look at what the numbers are supposed to be for your base values. So your low jet is supposed to be between 1/4 and 1/3 of a turn. I prefer to start on the richer side, so I would go screw it all the way in till it stops. Do not go super hard, gently to where it stops. Go 1/3 out. You're going to start there, and you're going to start tuning on your low jet, and you're going to be giving light little blips of the throttle, and you're looking for two things. One, you want a smooth idle. As you get leaner, you can potentially have a wandering, searching idle that just doesn't ever settle down. That generally means you're slightly too lean. The other thing you can have is a slight hesitation or a complete lack of the ability for the motor to increase RPM when you give it a small blip of the throttle quickly. That means you're too lean. You need to bring it back a little richer. But like I said, they have videos on that. All of these adjustments need to be made when the motor is completely warm. Be aware of that. So now, once you get your low jet set properly, now we're going to move to the high jet. And this is the jet I was having problems with, and I'll let you listen to what my motor was doing. I'll show you when I make an adjustment richer, and you can see what it does, and then we'll start moving in the right direction and moving leaner, and you can see what it does. Now here I just needed to make a small base adjustment on the idle because it was too high and the prop was spinning, and I didn't want it to be spinning when it was idling, so I dropped that a little bit. But as you can see here, my high jet actually has a little T-handle attachment on it. Some motors have this, some don't. I don't know why, but mine has it. And as you can see, my warranty sticker thing was already broken. So my warranty was supposedly void before I even touched it. Okay, so this is our baseline. This is where I got the motor. As I'm doing this run up, see if you can identify any issues with it. Could you see it? I want you to pay attention to two things. One, watch the motor. Specifically watch the exhaust and watch it shake at certain points and watch it be smooth at other points. The second thing is listen. Listen to the way the motor's revving up. Listen to the way it jumps in RPM and listen to how uneven and just crappy it sounds once it takes that jump up to the higher RPM.
Alright, so I'm going to try to give a smooth application of throttle all the way up. Idle's a little high. All the way up to the maximum RPM, and you'll be able to hear that jump. This is going to be smooth all the way.
This is a classic symptom of your high jet being too rich. It's loading up with fuel and it's not wanting to clear out until you really get the throttle open and you get a lot of air moving in there. You can also see all the shaking and all the woo where it doesn't want to rev through cleanly. Once again, too rich. So, just to drive our point home a little bit, we're actually going to richen it a little bit more. And you're going to see what happens. Yeah. We're going to make a very small adjustment. So when you turn counterclockwise, you're going richer. When you turn clockwise, you're going leaner. So essentially the way I like to set my idle is I want it to be smooth and I want it to be high enough that it's smooth, but low enough to where the prop isn't spinning. So if we achieve that, we've got a good idle now. Now let's do a smooth run up and see what happens. Alright, so I'm not sure you could really see that much in the video there, but what I could feel on my back, it felt worse. It definitely kind of hesitated and shook and vibrated and coughed more than it did before. So, if that's the symptom that you have, you're too rich. And like I said, you can start leaning it out. I mean, that works. That's actually what I did in this video, was just started leaning it out step by step. But honestly, if you have that issue, go back to your base setting, because honestly, a majority of the time, going to the base setting is going to fix it. At the very least, it will get you closer. The example that I'm giving here with this motor, it was pretty far off. And you can see, I'll show you as I lean it out further and further, you can kind of see that all that hesitating and burbling and all that goes away, but you still don't have a linear power curve. So we'll go through and you can kind of hear that. Alright, so I leaned it out slightly more than I richened it last time. And the other thing that's a good idea to do if you can is to kind of do a couple little run-ups in between the tests. Go full throttle and just kind of clear it out. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then we'll do another test.
Alright, so obviously you could still hear there was a jump there, but all of that kind of burbly, gurgly, weird stuff that was happening is gone. So I think I'm gonna lean it out a tiny bit more and see what happens. Alright, we've gone like another, I would say, we'll talk in a clock face. I went about 2 minutes. So we're not making big adjustments. These carburetors are very sensitive, so small adjustments. Alright, let's go see it's alright. Obviously we're adjusting the high jet, so that shouldn't be affecting anything around idle. I'm blowing so many leaves off the tree over here. So actually that got better. Before it was right around 53 to 5400 RPM. That time I think I made it to 56. And the jump didn't feel quite as abrupt to me. It also, generally when you go leaner, you make a little more power. It's typically, if you're in the right zone of the air to fuel, more power is good. But if you go too lean, you actually will make more power running a little bit too lean, but it's more dangerous for your motor. So I always want to err a little on the side of being rich, but I want it to run smooth. I need that linear power. If I grab a throttle setting, I need it to be there. I can't go to grab it and I get nothing, and then I grab a little bit more and I get full throttle. Like it's just not. It's not easy to fly smooth that way. So we're gonna lean it out another 2 minutes and see how it feels.
we're going to go leaner still. By the time I finished this, I had leaned out the motor by 3/4 of a turn. And I went back to the fully closed position to see how far away I was. And lo and behold, I was about 1 1/4 turns out. So it turns out that the motor was 2 full turns out initially. And the factory spec is 1 1/8 to 1 1/4. So that's why I say you just go back to the richer side of the base setting, and then you can tune from there, because generally it's going to get you a lot closer. But I'll show you a little clip of the motor at full throttle before I made all these adjustments, and then the motor at full throttle after I made all these adjustments, and you can hear the difference in RPM and just how clean it revs. And I'll also give you a full throttle climb here in a video in a second, but not only can you hear how much cleaner the motor sounds, but you can also hear how much more control I have over the throttle and how much more linear it is. I'm basically going near the same rate with increasing my throttle, but before I could move the throttle 1/2 inch and it wouldn't react. Now any incremental movement I make with the throttle, I get that amount of RPM, and that's what you want. So here's a quick full throttle climb next to my buddy, and you can just hear the RPM difference and how much more clean the motor sounds.
Evenly matched. I think he's out climbing me, and he's on a 130 prop. I think he was out climbing me by like a couple feet.
And the other thing that I noticed going from being way too rich to tuned properly was the maximum RPM of the motor. Sometimes I could get the motor to 8,600 initially on my first flight on it, and most of the time it was like 8570, 8580, and that's pretty low for a factory R. After all of my tuning finished, my final RPM that I was at was 8780. So essentially I jumped up by 200 RPM in my max. So that makes a pretty big difference in your climb rate. And the motor, it makes its maximum power at 8,800 RPM, so you're basically right at your peak power at 8780. So I'm pretty happy with that. So one of the places that obviously you need all that linear power is when you're flying low and foot dragging and doing all this kind of stuff. So I wasn't able to do this when the motor was tuned the way it was initially, but now it feels perfect. It's buttery smooth. So now you know what it's like if it's too rich and how to fix it. If it's too lean, if you're only slightly too lean, you could just have a lot more power. Like it could be revving at 8850, 8900. I don't know. I mean, it could be up in that RPM range. The other thing is, if it's way too lean, you could just have it, bog or hesitate or whatever whenever you try to go full throttle. If you jam the throttle, it might just fall on its face. But one of the best ways that you can figure out where you are, if your motor's running pretty good, you're happy with the way it's running, throw a fresh spark plug in, go for a 30-minute flight. You can try to do some nice full throttle climbs, Try to do a nice, smooth, steady RPM, just flying straight and level. But try to keep the RPMs up a little bit and fly around for about 30 minutes and then shut the motor off and land. Don't let it idle for a bunch of time. Shut it off, land, and then pull the spark plug and take a look at it. And I'll try and see if I can put up on screen pictures of what you want your spark plug to look like, what it looks like if it's too lean, and what it would look like if it's too rich. That way at least you can get a baseline of where you're at. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned a little bit. Obviously, like I said, make any of these adjustments at your own risk, but this should at least help give you an idea of what you need to do if you are having high jet tuning issues. So, good luck, and I'll see you on the next one.